and affirming the unique position of queer identity in relation to sexual empowerment and liberation, and also defining common imbalances and traumas that are specific to the LGBTQIAA alphabet soup community. Ones that positively, not traumas, but traumas that negatively impact us and will throw our sexual lives into imbalance and disarray. And I hope in doing so, by naming them, we can all leave the classroom space feeling seen and feeling more resourced to navigate queer sex and intimacy than when we arrived. So I'm not just going to take us through like a historic reenactment of all the horrors that has happened, but I guess the content warning, trigger warning is like, it's a conversation about sex and intimacy. And I'm not really going to talk about specifics with like sexual acts or anything, because this is about making the container. But, sometimes even just naming a trauma can be triggering. So, and there's some lists in the beginning that's very like trauma informed, and just kind of having a big map of what things we might experience. And, if for any reason it's overwhelming, like you can turn off your screen, you can dip, you can take care of yourself. Like, please take care of yourself during this time. And, after, you can always hit me up and be like, maybe do it a different way if you weren't feeling it. Always open to critique, recommendations, suggestions. And this is kind of like a lecture style class because there's so much. So I'm going to ask everyone to, as questions come up, like jot them down, and then we'll come back to it. I'm going to try to leave like a big space at the end to chat. And as you can see at the top of the chat, I posted a link to my website, and all the herb lists are there. So when we get to that point, you can follow along on that, like in a different screen if you want. And just to say, like, if you don't get it in your notes, it's okay. Like, you can have my notes. Like, there's no need for scarcity in this situation.
Violet, can you actually put that in the chat again? Because I think anyone who logged on after you put that in the chat should be able to see it. Thank you.
Let's see. Beep, beep. Okay, so that's the link to the website. That's just kind of raw info and not my script. Try to save you that. And then here's a link to a yes, no, maybe list that I will reference later. Okay, I developed this class from what I learned from my teachers, Stasha Stahl at bayherbalist.com, and Sarah Holmes and Karen Sanders from the Blue Otter School of Herbal Medicine that I attended 2 years ago. And also from an interview with Diane DeLuca, who wrote Botanica Erotica. It's a book about arousing body, mind, and spirit. And also from notes that I took at the Dandelion Seed Conference in Olympia 2017, from Lyndon DeVille's class that's called Let's Get It On Beyond Aphrodisiacs. So just to say, like, I didn't just come up with all this stuff by myself. Like, other great minds preceded me that I'm kind of piggybacking on. So maybe I'll pull in this, I'm going to go to share screen, and I'm going to toggle back and forth between this very exciting PowerPoint. Oh my God. So there's this exciting page. Let's see. I don't know how to make the next screen go, actually. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So I have to first start with some premises, which is like, what is queer sex? What isn't queer sex? So here's my premise. Like, I'm just going to outline some philosophies. They might not be correct, but this is the working model I'm working with for the time that we have together in this container. So what is the model of cis-sexual heterosexual sex? It's productive, it's linear, fastest straight line to orgasm. Look at all this stuff. It's not really great. You know, there's oppression in there, power imbalances. It's not supportive. There's shame involved. It lacks self-examination. It's unconsensual. Yeah, so this is the working model that like we're all supposed to have from the dominant culture at large. And wow, that sucks.
Hey, Violet, I don't think you're sharing your screen right now.
Oh, really? Okay, let's look. Let me try again.
Yeah, sometimes it gets a little funky when you try to switch the PowerPoint slides,
I
but
see that.
I
Okay.
think maybe you can, if you try and like put it in presentation view and then click the arrows on the bottom,
Oh, presentation view. I don't even know what that
or
is.
if you go to the top right where it says play, maybe
Yeah. Bing.
see what that does.
Can you see that?
Yeah, that looks good to me.
Okay. Great. Okay, so here it is. This is the working model that we're all given to by like white Western capitalism. And this model is really tragic. And why I drag this horrible model in to look at is so that we can juxtapose it to, well, what is like the queer model where we're working with at our best. Can you see that? Okay, here's queer sex at its best. It's not capitalist productive, it's nonlinear, orgasms may not be a goal. It's not inherently centered on reproduction. The roles can be fluid, negotiable, exchangeable, shared amongst like all the different parts of power and gender and positions. Consensual, it's trauma informed and embraces kink and BDSM. It can be a kind of rebellion. It's inclusive, transformative, it's anti-oppression informed and focused, slut affirming. It supports and protects survivors. It's examined. It respects and protects and elevates sex work and sex workers. It's body positive and embraces all cultural expressions of beauty. That's like what we have at our best. And I really wanted to make that differentiation because, okay, we can certainly drag all of this crap into our queer relationships, right? Because of the process of internalization and just like the huge overculture that we're in. But I wanted to illustrate that, in my opinion, as queer bodies in space, we are in a unique position of actually being able to liberate our sex and ourselves through sex, both individually and collectively. This is a huge difference from this. Oh my God. This model does not work for anyone. It's how does joy arrive from this model here? I have no idea. And a lot of like our struggle as queers is like for autonomy over our bodies and our gender and our sex life and engagement. Our kinks and our fetish is intrinsically tied to our sexual experience. And why, here's some more reasons why I make the distinction as we move on. Because there's different models that people present when they're talking about arousal in the like scientific community or whatever, right? And so most of the world uses this Johnson model, which I'm like, of course it's a John that makes a model. But so the cis-het model is based on bigger, faster, testosterone-ier, harder and hotter. And it follows this diagram: excitement, plateau, orgasm, resolution. And there's not very much room for deviation in there. And the events are seamless. Awkwardness is counterproductive. No is counterproductive. Dialogue is not sexy. everyone is supposed to just inherently know what to do. And if it's not incredible, it's not good. And good sex entails a certain loss of control to emotions, right? I feel like that's what I get from the dominant culture, straight, dominant, heterosexual culture. And when I'm teaching a class on aphrodisiacs and intimacy and stuff, like I want to take a big step away from this model. Why? That's not a very safe model. No, capitals. There's no way that model could work for everyone. It doesn't even work for cissexual heteropatriarchy. You know, it's not even working except for power imbalance. That's the only place it works. It's not trauma informed or harm reduction informed. It's so based on stimulation, and it doesn't take into account the way stimulation affects stress, anxiety, and trauma. And what happens when we're overstimulated? If we're already stressed and have anxiety, what happens when we add stimulation to stimulation? We dissociate, we shut down, we numb out, we panic, we go into our sympathetic nervous system, our fight, flight, or fright response. And, you know, that is a big barrier to sex. Like, that is a barrier for us. And should be taken into account when we're talking about, well, how do we get us to sex, especially if we have an imbalance happening? That model is also very, stimulation tends to be very androgen, testosterone dominated and focused. All those aphrodisiacs, horny goat weed, Viagra, Damiana, bee pollen, it's all about testosterone, you know, and it doesn't pay particular mind to the sexual arousal and stimulation that estrogens produce and other hormones. Like, there's other hormones at play during sex, not just testosterone. And maybe it's who's controlling the narrative in the science world, why the Johnson model is so used, you know. Maybe there's not enough people with a diverse array of hormones and identities that are like informing the process of how we become stimulated or how sex happens. And definitely our turn-ons are idiosyncratic, which is to say they're very specific to each individual person. There's no rule that is going to fit everybody. There's no herb that's going to fit everybody. And you might find different herbs help you at different times, depending on where you're at in your life. So I'm kind of proposing a different model in this class. And I'm sort of tied to like the linear model due to like I'm using PowerPoint on a computer. It's hard to really just like draw a really wild map. But I'm kind of proposing this model, which is that sexual engagement can begin with a time of relaxation, a time of toning down stress, then a time of negotiation and scene development, a time of warmth and engorgement, excitement and play. There's a time of reciprocity of pleasure, the enactment of the scene created in the negotiation phase, and a return to release and affirmation, right? This is like a theoretical model. I'm not a scientist. I created this rubric for the class to give it some shape. And I wish my model had a lot of asterisks between all that stuff to invite, like, this is when the awkward thing happens. This is when the no happens and we respect the other person and we like get back to it or we take a break. And this is like when we go back to negotiation. This is when we like cruise over to back to release and affirmation, right? It's like these are points in a spiral that we can move to and away from, depending on what suits us in the moment, not necessarily like a perfect arc of time where we do this perfectly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I wanted to bring this extremely long list of things that affect our life and sex life negatively. And just put it, I really wanted to put it up there to kind of take a minute to recognize that there's a lot of stuff outside of our autonomy and desires that like affect the way that we move towards sex, the way that we engage with sex, the way that we're able to process sex. Like, and a lot of it is put on us from the dominant culture, which is a horrible tragedy and extremely abusive and hostile. And I think it's important to have a list like this so, you know, we can take a kind of step back sometimes and be like, oh, well, like, how do I get to the place that I want? Maybe it is just insomnia and it's not that I'm fucked up. Maybe it's there's too much intimacy when all I want to do is fuck, you know, and I need to establish boundaries on that now. Like I need to like figure out my relationship. Oh, maybe I have some resentments. Maybe the impact of world events is throwing my sex game off, right? It's just to take it out of our personal responsibility to be completely healed all the damn time, which is a narrative that is just pumped on the virtual realm right now. And, you know, we can be on our path to healing and still have our difficulties and wounds along the way. That path is also not linear. And the point I'm really trying to make with this list is sex is complicated as fuck. The model of like, we just go at it and then like a wild animus takes over us is like not really how it works all the time. And, you know, it's very easy to knowingly or unknowingly cause harm during sex. It's a vulnerable place, and those, like our reproductive system is vulnerable. We're vulnerable there. That's the seat of our power. That's the root of our personal power. And it would behoove us to be a little more mindful as we step outside the Johnson model to like take into account that sex is really hard. And while every person deserves to have a creative, fulfilling, healing, pleasurable sex life, that's often not where we find ourselves in the present moment. And that's okay. You know, just so you could hear it from somebody, that's okay. We're not culpable for having experienced sexual difficulty in our lives. You know, that's just like each person is different and we have different harms that come to us and different experiences that might throw us off that game. And as queers, anyone in the LGBTQIA spectrum, there are a ton of traumas that and oppressions that are put on us depending on our identity or the collusion of identities, the intersection of identities that we have. And those impact our lives in extremely profound ways. And before we start, I just want to say, you know, it's okay to say no to sex. It's okay to be sex positive and be like no to sex. It's okay to not be ready or able to have sex. It's okay to move slowly in relationships. Sex can be tremendously regenerative and healing. And also, not having sex can be extremely regenerative and healing. For some people, not having sex is part of the aphrodisia process. Like that's part of the whole spectrum of their sexual health, is having time to take care of themselves and, self-care. And that we live in a highly sexualized world that tells us that if we aren't having sex constantly, then we are not doing well with our lives. And it also tells us, as queer and trans people, non-binary people, as gender fluid people, as anybody on that spectrum, that we're immoral, terrible monsters that are going to hell, right? So it's like, okay, we have to carry that with us into our sex. That's real. That's a burden, and even when we reject it and don't believe it, it's just, it's like a cactus needle that can get stuck under your skin, and you don't get it out the first few times, and it might follow you a little bit. So and I just wanted to say, sometimes when we get ourselves into a extremely safe, awesome environment, that's when all the trauma comes up. It's like meditation. When you finally get quiet, that's when all your stuff comes up. So just to say, like, there's so many different ways that sexual interactions can go down. And as queer people, I think that we need to have a space to recognize that, like, a lot of stuff is going to come up. That like tussle I had with someone on the street the other day, that might come up when I have sex. Or like all kinds of stuff, like me not being out when I was 11 might come up when I'm having sex. It's just, there's a lot of stuff. And part of the healing is recognizing that and being like, we can use this as food to nourish our experience and like heal through that, through our relationships, whether it's through the land, through the plants, through humans, with sex. Like we can use this stuff and channel it. What even is my next slide? Okay, so now we're going to kind of get into the herbs and stuff. I think I'm on track. And so we've taken all that into account. Sex is hard. It's not always simple. We can have any desire from like long-term, very sweet, flowery sex to like, I just want to fuck you on the weekend. There's like a huge range. But in this theoretical model, we start with relaxation. So in relaxation, it's helpful to have a period before sex where we can tone down the sympathetic, rather. Parasympathetic is actually, I wrote the wrong thing down there. So we tone down the sympathetic fight, flight, or flight response, or fright response, because stress works to constrict tissues. It reduces circulation. And when we're talking about sex, we want to bring warmth and blood to tissues. We want to increase circulation in the reach of the warmth of our blood. And here's some herbs for that relaxation space. And there's a lot, right? And some of them might seem rather rote because they definitely fall into like Valentine's Day kind of stuff. But, they actually are kind of effective. So relaxation space, you could try adaptogens, Tulsi, ashwagandha, ginseng. These are typically Indian, Ayurvedic herbs. There's nervines, stuff that affects our nerves in particular and feeds them or tones down the like heat of our nervous system response. Things like California poppy, skullcap, lavender, kava, passion flower, lemon balm, vervain, catnip. And there's subdivisions of nervines. There's aromatics, which is basically anything that smells nice to you is going to relax you. So, just I've listed some stuff, but really it's anything pleasing to you. Hydrosol is a little water spritz that people use. The rose or orange blossom waters that you can get at Middle Eastern markets and stuff. Those are wonderful scents. Euphorians, which is also kind of a subdivision of nervines, which as they sound, create a little euphoria when you smell them. I put poppers in there because why the hell not? This is talk on queer sex and relationship. It's not actually an herb, but I don't know what, paint thinner must come from some kind of plant. There's heart tonics and openers. Like hawthorn and bleeding heart, violets. If you're prone to panic, like I am, you could try a low dose use of anemone or bleeding heart, just a couple of drops, really just tone down and drop you back into your body. There's pelvic opening stuff, like ginger, like ocotillo and angelica. Sweets, fresh fruit rather than dried fruit because it's aqueous, it's watery, and we really just want to be like watery and loose in this time of relaxation before engaging in sex. For some people, food can be a kind of relaxation, even though too much fullness is kind of like an anaphrodisiac, which is like an anti-aphrodisiac. And there's a lot to be said for ambiance, right? Music, lighting, time of day, setting. Are you dancing? Did you make a plan together? Is it like industrial goth music from Germany? Is it like sweet, like 70s music? Is it a bedroom, a dungeon? All of these things really play into it. You're trying to fit relaxation, but maybe also you have a mind towards like, oh, where are we going with the sex and stuff today? So then there's the negotiation, scene development. And so I wrote, we can honor our trauma and need for safety by incorporating a negotiation space together prior to engaging sexually. We can ask ourselves, what would you like to do tonight? How would you like to get off? What are your triggers? What are your hard no's? Well, what is too much? What's too little? You can create a safety word. That's, anything from an all stop to sex to like a midway word. Tending to have discussions, we tend to get anxious and tight when we don't know what the hell is going to happen. And setting a frame, having agreements, knowing the limits, agreeing on respect helps us to like have some idea of what's coming, and that can really help ground us and feel safe and kind of like be open to letting the energy of sexual energy like move in through us, right? Like it's just one more stressor to take down. And I think, it's kind of like a cool thing culturally to make this kind of talk cool and sexy. It might not be the funnest part, but I think it's important to build a culture where like this isn't like a turn off, where this is actually like drives you up a little bit, where you're like, cool negotiation, like, yeah, getting what I want, yeah, setting space for myself, like, yes. It doesn't have to be this like labored process, intense thing. Especially if you can find shared language for yourself around it with whoever you're going to have sex with. So I put some flower essences. Flower essences. The last round of stuff I gave you, that was like a lot of teas, a lot of tinctures, a lot of physical doses, stuff that's more just about relaxing the actual body. And this is more like touching on like the spirit. And we do that by using really low doses, a drop, a tiny sip of tea. Sometimes maybe just having the plant in a pocket, maybe you have it in your hair, and just connecting with it, keeping it in mind. And a lot of these sort of are for couples, but I can see them in like any type of engagement. Yeah, there's chamomile, which helps people struggling with commitment issues. People often will seal a commitment on a bed of chamomile. They'll put it in sheets. Lemon balm is a huge one to heal sexual trauma and be able to move through sexual trauma. It really helps reclaim sensuality. And it's just overall good. I think even in like a big tea form, not just the drops, I feel like in all avenues, lemon balm is good. There's yarrow, which, you know, it helps you understand where you end and another person begins. It's about having clearly defined boundaries. And pink yarrow is about having an emotional boundary. It's specifically about like, this person really gets at me emotionally. Skullcap, it binds fidelity in couples. There's protection stuff that you can bring in, you know, whether you burn it and use the smoke, or you hang it on a door, or you wash the floors with it. Like St. John's wort, rosemary, cedar, sage. Like that, the protection list goes so deep. There's so many different plants for that are outside of my scope and wouldn't be appropriate for me to even be pulling in here. I think olive for peacemaking and kind of like treaty making with people, you know, like when you have to just be like, I'm sorry, can, you know, like it's very helpful. Sunflower for cultivating self-radiance, shining your very particular light. And it helps standing up in yourself. There's goldenrod, which helps people get through hard times. You know, it often gives help through hard times by like giving you a little like preview of what that hard time might be. It's like a little bit prophetic in that way. And there's all kinds of love medicines like meadowsweet, like violet, like rose, like bleeding heart, bougainvillea. Just some hypothesized flowers for agreements. What does this even say? So this is herbs to support our personal needs. Because yeah, we walk into the engagement with another person, but like maybe we're just gonna have sex with ourselves tonight. Or maybe we just wanna work on something independent, even though we're gonna be collaborating in this like sensual negotiation with somebody. And this list is so long. I'm just gonna do a little going through it for sure. So there's ocotillo, which is a spiritual barbed wire. It opens up your personal power, opens you up to your personal power, and get down in that pelvic region. I do recommend it for tops and doms and sex workers, like especially if there's something where like, I'm gonna need some real hard boundaries today. I'm gonna need to just assert myself, you know. And it can help if you're like, I want to bring heat to my reproductive structure. You do ocotillo with like ginger, and like ginger is already headed there, but it will assist, it will draw it down. You know, you might do it with another essence where you're like, oh, well, I want to invoke a sense of play, but like specifically, I want to feel it down there. You might do Damiana and ocotillo. You know, you can always mix stuff up and try different things. I really like self-heal because it releases a person from negative self-talk. And it aligns you, just straightens you right up, which I think is helpful for like, I don't know, feeling present. Again, protection. We saw these in the last round: St. John's wort, rosemary, cedar, sage. There's Damiana, which invokes a sense of play. Prickly ash, which opens you up to your fire and passion. There's wild yam, which calms the emotion and helps when you have trouble with your sexual identity and the maturity around that. There's willow and bamboo, which allows one to be flexible. Especially bamboo, like strong and flexible. You get both. Manzanita is for when there's dissociation, you're leaving your body or there's some revulsion towards your body. It's for embodiment and acceptance, and it helps really like soften. It'll help soften those edges when you're maybe a little, you're a little too edgy for what the situation demands, for what you'd like to bring. Ginkgo for a sense of belonging in oneself, being comfortable in one's own skin. There's Vitex, which helps the femme be sexual. And it's also helpful with dysphoria. There's American wolfberry, which is finding and being in your territory. You know, it's like not just your body, but like what is the energy you put it out? How far are you holding it out? Are you in tight? Are you out real big, taking up a lot of space? It helps you really feel that out. Might help you move it around and play with the size of the space that you take up. There's California poppy, which helps ease the mind and body connection. It blends the body, heart, and mind in such a nice way. There's bleeding heart, which brings back the sparkle. Especially if you're like kind of down, bleeding heart will like just add that glitter, that little gay glitter that you need to like go to the show, step out of your house. I wanted to put, sometimes you just got to leave a person, and that's, it's like, oh, I didn't actually need all of these aphrodisiacs. I just needed to leave this person. So kidney wood and pokeberry are helpful with that. Pokeberry in like 1 drop. This is kind of like poisonous plant. Maybe a flower essence instead. There's oak for deep grounding. Think of that taproot. Some oaks have 80-foot taproots. Like that will, like if you just need to be grounded, it's very helpful. And then I wanted to put blue flag and Douglas iris because they help bring someone forward who's overshadowed by a lover. And this is helpful for trans people in relationship with a cis lover, especially because I feel like there's just some stuff where like, cis people get a lot of the shine. And we might take that into our sex times. Does anyone have any questions so far? I'm just kind of blasting through it right now. All right. Wow. Mind blown, no questions. Okay, there's also Rescue Remedy, which like a million companies have a different rescue remedy, or this plant Angelica. Both invoke a sense of safety and calmness. Kind of in like the you're a deer in the woods and like your mom has put you under a nice little like safe thing, like a big fern. It's kind of like that, where it's like you're in the nice like safe wooded place. Like that is what Angelica makes me think of, because animals react to Angelica that way. And Rescue Remedy, yeah, is just for all about like trying to find like kind of feeling at home when you're shook up or there's been a trauma. So this is the part where we like kind of actually talk about aphrodisiacs, which is the warmth, engorgement, and beyond. So it's like we had our relaxation time, right? We like relaxed. Our muscles got really easy and loose, and we're like, I like what's happening. And then we like negotiated the space. Hey, you're not going to touch me that way, but you're going to touch me in this way. Okay, that's nice. We're feeling good. And now we're like, oh, let's like bring heat into the situation. Let's like spark some fire between us. Maybe that already happened. Maybe there's notes of that on the way to this point. As you saw, some of those stuff in the first section, the relaxation stuff, was also warming. You'll see them, a lot of them again in this section, because there's plants, some that kind of do it all. So here's our warmth time. And, warming is just what it means. Stuff that heats you up, which is turmeric, ginger, wild oat, damiana, cinnamon, cayenne, rosemary, garlic, rosemary twice. Wow. Like kind of like any hot cuppa is gonna like get you warm in a way. Like if you just drink hot water, it's gonna get you warm. But specifically this stuff is nice. And ginger is nice. It brings heat to the reproductive system. That can be quite nice. Wild oat is warming, but it also feeds your adrenals, so that can be really nice. And it tones down your like nervous response, but also will make you feel kind of lively and energetic. That's wild oat. And we might see some of these plants again in stimulating. So a lot of people will use any ginseng for stimulation. Damiana is stimulating. And we're going to talk more about damiana in the next slide. Rosemary is super stimulating. I will often, if people are trying to quit caffeine, sometimes I'll recommend that they drink a rosemary tea in the morning, and it's whoosh, a lot of energy. Chocolate is stimulating. Caffeine, like a green tea or black tea might get you there. Maca, potency wood, and yohimbe. But yohimbe is like, if you have bipolar, like this is not a good one for you. You know, you might mix them up. You have a ginger tea with some chocolate, you put some Damiana with some turmeric. Maybe you play a game where you're like, let's see what part gets warm when we drink what. You know, you're like, cool, like, oh, it's your heart. Can I touch your heart? Oh, it's your hands. Can I touch your hands? It's a nice way to maybe intro some touch. There's always oils infused with herbs, like if you give a massage. You could do violet oil on the heart for like grief and love medicine. And I have a note on lubrication, because sometimes this can be a real stressor when it comes to sex. And our bodies might not be producing enough lubrication to be like fun for us. So coconut oil is a dandy, like at any time. It's quite helpful. Evening primrose supplement, like daily up to 3,000 milligrams, can help keep the reproductive system lubricated. So I think you can also take like a tablespoon of like the oil once a day. There's also the supplement of P5P B6 that can increase vaginal reproductive lubrication. But that supplement can have a little nauseated feeling come up. So hit or miss, but it's something on deck if you're interested. Drinking a lot of water can help. And also just lube, like just having lube on deck someplace, maybe having 2 lubes. And trying them out. Often a lot of lubes sound really good on the package, and then you get into them and you're like, this actually sucks. And like experimenting with that, and just it's okay to like try a bunch of lubes and just like pull it out. Like there's no, we can build a culture of that not being like a shameful thing, or having that indicate that you're having a hard time with lubrication if that's not something you want to bring focus to. Just be like, oh, I do this all the time or whatever. Sometimes it's the fear of incontinence and urgency that will keep us from wanting to have sex. And so couch grass is really helpful with that. Drinking a tea of that, or taking a lot of tincture in like the hour or so before we engage in sex is helpful. Also, this kidney wood is quite good. And yerba mansa is really nice. Kidney wood is funny though, because it's like even in the physical doses, it tends to like in like people just make big life changes for the better. But just to say, like, that's kind of, you know, kidney wood, be careful. Like it comes with this weird, like, we don't know why, but it just makes big life changes happen. And that's why I put it energetically with like leave a partner, because it's like that happens a lot when the relationship isn't working and a person's taking it. And then for people who are into estrogen as a form of like aphrodisia, like there's licorice, which you don't really want licorice with like hypertension, you know, like definitely do some research into licorice before you take it. You don't want to have it with spironolactone, which is the T blocker, for people who are transitioning to any fem spectrum thing with HRT. There's black cohosh, which is estrogenic, but too much black cohosh can make you have like a full bore headache. So it's like just going slow, go low and slow at first. Red clover is really nice. Soy has estrogen, like a lot of phytoestrogens. Yeah, so it's like, okay, now we're in the warm space, like we're drinking turmeric, like we're getting lubed up, right? It's like I took like 1,000 squirts of the couch grass. I'm not gonna pee. I'm really stoked, you know, I was relaxed before and now I'm like feeling good. Uh, and now we have the like true aphrodisiacs, which most are not ethically sourced at all. So that's something to think about when you're purchasing these products, is maybe trying to get them from something, a company that's ethical or somewhere that is like growing them and not wild taking them, not depleting the like bioregion that they came from. Um, so yeah, Damiana comes up again. This is like the old school aphrodisiac. It's warming, it's androgenic. It, I find uh it's less like, ooh, I want to fuck, and more like, ooh, I want to like play. I want to like play around right now. Um, and it's quoted as increasing sexual desire and frequency and pleasure. Um, and some of these drugs have a nitrous oxide effect, which is kind of like it's similar to what happens with like laughing gas a little bit, where you get lightheaded and like in very large amounts, they can make you feel a little like too euphoric and like too lightheaded. So this, I put that there. You see that, keep that in mind, start low and slow. Also, when I'm talking about this stuff, a lot of it is for like erectile dysfunction and stuff. And, you know, I don't personally assign reproductive organs to like gender identities. So we're going to throw that out the window. And also just say like clitoral tissues are like the same shit as like erectile tissues, right? It's all kind of like erectile tissues. So even though seems to be really focused on a particular projection of like erection, like use, like anyone can use this stuff and like see if it works. There was no like this stuff works for everybody, but it could work for any person, any like yeah, it could work for anybody, and you just have to experiment with it and just kind of feel it out. So there's maca. That's very warming. It increases desire without changing hormone levels, which is great for people who have experienced menopause or experiencing menopause. Is that even ethical to use without ritual use? You know, it's worth asking. I don't really use this plant. There's potency wood, which is stimulating. It's warm and dry. It's a nervous system stimulant. And it's like all about, you just need fluid excitement and engorgement. You just need your tissues to be engorged. You go for potency wood. And that one is not for high blood pressure. Looks like ginkgo increases the effects a little bit when you add them together. There's yohimbe, which is a kind of herbal Viagra. Again, that just means that it engorges tissues. It looks like it can make people aggro. You want to use it carefully. Definitely do not use it if you have bipolar disorder. There's horny goatweed, which is another herbal Viagra. There's shatavari, which increases libido, which can be nice, like taking that in the lead up, maybe like in the week before you like come to the table for your negotiation, playtime, etc. There's puncture vine, which is also like a stimulant. And cottonwood bark is not an aphrodisiac, but it is for when you have a low libido, and the sign is like you have no sensation in your nipple. You can use a little cottonwood bark. Just not too much tincture. I just want to throw that out there. It was like a random fact. I couldn't find a proper place for it. So yeah, you can kind of see why, like, when we don't relax before we take a bunch of this stuff, it gets a little gnarly. Like, aphrodisiac, they don't tell you like it might make you aggro, or if you're already amping on androgens and then you take a bunch of androgen, like, do we really want to have you hanging out? Like, we don't know. Like, is that going to blow you out and you'll be so hot you'll perspire before you even get to the sex? I just think it's like the toning down lets us get to a normal where when we actually experiment with this stuff, we can start from like a baseline in our like scientific study of ourselves and be like, oh, this is how I actually respond to Yohimbe. It's like if I get off the bus and I ride my bike and I almost get hit by a car and I show up to the sex scene and then I take a bunch of Yohimbe, like, that's not like a good, that's not really a good way for me to be like, how does this affect my energy? Because my energy is already spun. And when your energy is unchanneled and you just add more circulation to it, it's like it just becomes kind of a whirlwind and we lose presence, which I feel like is so necessary, during the sexual times, especially if you're like wanting to respect all that negotiation that you made earlier on. This is a quick version of some herbs as sex toys. So there's cordage plants, stuff that they used to make rope out of, that you can make whips or braids or just like, smack each other with. You can make restraints out of them. So that's like stinging nettles. There's mugwort, Pacific aster, goldenrod. There's canes, which is bamboo. We use a sugar cane, which sounds funny to me, and you could like eat the sugar cane. There's elderberry, it's hollow, it's kind of light. There's willow. There's thorns and prickles, which like in very low like action, you're not hitting very hard, might be quite nice for some people. Rose, hawthorn branches, ocotillo branches, like probably want to stay away from cactuses because they often have tines that like double back when they are inserted. So, before you pull out like a pad of a cactus, you might want to not do that. For stings, there's sting nettles. Like, I don't know, that people love that sting. You could always do like a big red bed of petals. Maybe you do a bed of stingy if you're into pain. Maybe you do like, I don't know, there's all kinds of fun stuff. If you're into like making a big mess, you could do cleavers because they're kind of scratchy and would cover you. Like, plants are enjoyable, and they have different tactile things that might resemble other things that we use in our sex life day to day that are like just human made. And it can be fun if you're geeking out on herbs to like take a trip into like, well, can we bring herbs into the situation? Some of these herbs have really deep spiritual connections with people, and it can be nice to bring that in and be like, yeah, like hawthorn even hangs out with me when I like engage in sex, beep beep, and that's it. That's kind of the bulk of the information I have for you. And yeah, I'm going to take this off that screen. And I apologize for going so fast, but I wanted to get it in and have Q&A. So I feel like that is very important. People are into it.
That was great, Violet. Thank you so much. I just wanted to also shout out that there were a couple of questions in the chat already. One person is asking if there are any blends you would recommend for overthinking / racing thoughts. And another person is asking if folks are on hormones or have hormone imbalances, do we worry about the androgenic or estrogenic herbs?
Oh yeah. Okay, well, question one was what to do with racing thoughts. Yeah. Okay, so racing thoughts, you could try self-heal, like on the energetic, just 1 or 2 drop level, and that can help tone down the like quality of racing thoughts. You definitely would, I definitely would recommend passion flower. It's a specific for racing thoughts, and it helps get one into one's body. Um, Sometimes vervain can be okay with that. And the Cali poppy, because I see racing thoughts as like your energy is kind of moving in the adverse direction. And Cali poppy like puts it back where it's supposed to go. It like rechannels it. So you might find some relief from having that same energy put towards the opposite dynamic. But probably the first one to try is passion flower.
Yeah, I want to put in a good word for passion flower also because on the last workshop, when you were talking about herbs for like different apocalyptic symptoms, you recommended passion flower for insomnia, and I was having major insomnia, and I started drinking passion flower tea every
I
night,
did.
and it's totally gone.
Yes. Wow. Passion flower did you right. Wow. That makes me happy to hear. And the other one was hormonal imbalances and should one worry about the androgen rich stuff? I think it really depends on the imbalance, I guess, and which way you're imbalanced and at what time of day and where you're at in your cycle of imbalance. Like if I have an extreme estrogen, if I have an imbalance where I'm just showing estrogen all the time, I wouldn't worry too much about androgen stuff. If someone, but if you're already amping on androgens and stuff, then like you might want to tone it down. You might actually want to use Vitex or something to like tone down the androgenic response because it might be toning down that gets you to where you need to go. And it could be possible to have another, like maybe work with a herbalist and have like a totally another blend going on. That's just like, I'm treating my hormone imbalance like every day. And now I brought it to like the, like kind of, I've toned it down. And then it might be possible to use this more androgenic stuff. A lot of the stuff is not itself androgenic, but it stimulates it. So I think there's a little bit of difference in relating that. It's not just like you're taking pure, it's not like a steroid, but I would say either treat the imbalance itself and then you can walk into the stuff, or maybe go more with stuff like Vitex or there's another one that kind of just normalizes that. And I'm gonna circle back to that other one. And I don't know if that answers your question. Hormones are kind of like, wow. I'm gonna go through some more of these questions. One person asks, you put all of this in teas, you said? Yes, you can put most of this in teas. Some of it will not, like Vitex does not taste good. You might want to get that as a tincture, because the alcohol will mask the taste. But basically all that stuff you can get in teas. If taking a tincture is easier and faster for you, then like go with what works. If you're not a tea drinker, go with tinctures. If you're a tea drinker, bring in the teas because you know that you have familiarity with using herbs like that. Another person said, where do you get these herbs? Some of those herbs you can get from me. I have so many of these herbs. I have a stockpile of herbs that makes me look like a hoarder. Um, in Santa Cruz, there's the herb room, which is right next to the Staff of Life. They have a ton of herbs. In the Bay, there's Scarlet Rose. There's Five Flavors herbs. There's Lhasa Karnak. Some of the stuff they'll have at like, I don't know, Whole Foods and crap, not even to like any kind of like wooey Cali health food place is going to have stuff like this too. And they'll probably have singles of them, a single being like it's just one herb, or they might even have like a sexual desire blend or something like that. And when you look at it, you can kind of be like, oh, these vibe with me, you know? But I think it's nice. I get a bunch of singles and then I mix them together because I like to I want to know what each one feels like independently of another. And then I want to mix them together. Be like, oh shit, I love ginger and Vitex. We're like, oh fuck, like Damiana and Cali Poppy got me there. Like it kind of takes experimentation. Mm-hmm. That was kind of answering two questions. I made one question up top of it. That's it. That's all the questions about sex and intimacy.
You mentioned you were going to go over a list. Yes, no, maybe a little bit.
Oh, yeah, the yes, no, maybe list. Yeah, let's see. How do I make that happen? So one thing that can be so nice when you are, here we go. So one thing that I've found hard in my experience is you get to the negotiation space and you're like, rip, I don't actually know what I want. And that makes it hard because, probably it would help everyone involved to know what I want. And let's see if I can share the screen. I'm gonna try that. Okay, can you see this list? I know you can also see my little internet. Okay. So yeah, the yes, no, maybe list, you can get these off the internet for free and just print them. And you don't even have to give these to anybody. You can just do it for yourself, like a little like homework where you get to ask yourself weird, kinky questions. And you rate your experience, your willingness to do it, and notes and nuances. And yeah, I think this is super helpful. There's a lot of stuff here, right? And this is like definitely a like kink BDSM thing. And that's how I came up with it. I was informed by it from a lovely partner who dropped this knowledge on me. And I found it super helpful. I used to have a list of like a short list of all the stuff that was a yes or no written on the wall next to my bed, so that when people came into my bedroom, I would be like, here's this list. Like, look at the damn list. Like, no one can ever tell you I didn't say it, because it would be hard for me to say, but it'd be easy for me to have like a cool punk thing on the wall. And it was helpful to like have that. And it reinforced my own boundaries and stuff. And, I think some of this stuff, sometimes we don't even know what we like. It's a lifelong exploration of who we are and what we're into. And it changes as we change. And it might be fun to look on some of these and be like, oh, well, no. Oh, maybe And look at all this. This is nice. Imagine just giving this like a little dossier to the person you're with. And you're like, check it out. Like, stay off. No, just, and they know, that's, I just think that's nice. And uh, yeah, it doesn't really happen a lot. Like usual sex relations are just like I mentioned in the beginning, where there's like actually no formal process. You're just supposed to like get in and get like animal about it, which I think is fine if that's your thing, but like that's not a lot of people's thing. Or like it requires some explaining before we get to that part. How was that? Did that answer your question?
Violet, can you talk about any herbs that you would recommend for like after sex when you want to like chill out but like still feel good? Like you don't want to be like continue to be stimulated, or like maybe you want to like get ready to be relaxed again, but you still want to like feel nice.
Yeah, I would order a pizza personally. um, you don't want to get too relaxed. Well, I would say maybe Tulsi, because it's not sedative. Like Tulsi's so nice, and like that organic India like Tulsi rose tea is like the ubiquitous like gay like tea of our times. Um, yeah, I would maybe steer clear of stuff. That might be the time to steer clear of like the sedative stuff. So like maybe you don't want to take passion flower then if you don't want to sleep. Um, maybe you would want to, especially if you wanted to stay charged a little bit, you might think of something like, oh, I'll do a Tulsi tea, 30 drops of ginseng, just a little boop. Or maybe there's a thing called spikenard berry or spikenard root. It's like ginseng, but less. It's like less stimulating and more almost more adaptogenic, like happy. They call the berry happy berry. Um, I think that can be nice. And um, I'm trying to think another one that's just like a nice, clear, relaxing feeling. Maybe like Shazandra. This is another like kind of adaptogen thing. I think Shazandra is like all 5 flavors. So it's like kind of enticing and it's relaxing. Um, maybe something with just a little bit of rosemary. Probably be good. Yeah. But like maybe stay away from like, unless if you're very, very amped up and you want to be in, then maybe go with kava, passion flower and stuff. But if you're like, orgasm, or like whatever I just did puts me to sleep, you might want to like just bring in some more of the like spicy adaptogenic herbs. And like a takeout. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good holistic answer. Thank you.
Totally. Oh my God. Actually, hawthorn might be nice for that, honestly, because it's not really like an adaptogen or a nervine, but it's relaxing. And it's like about emotional resilience, so it might help broaden that feeling out a little bit. It's a little sweet.
I don't really have a question, but I wanted to say thank you. Thanks for this class.
Yeah, how was it? It was all right?
It was great.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming, everybody. So I can't believe that this got done in the amount of time that it did, because I just felt like those were long lists of stuff.
Yeah, this was chock full of info. I feel like I learned a lot, and I can't believe that you got all this info across in this time as well. Thank you so much, Violet. This was awesome. I want to also just plug that this will be on our YouTube channel. So if you like didn't take notes and want to go back to this, you definitely can. And Violet is also teaching another class next month, May 19th, which is Herbalism for Trans Health. I'll put the registration for that in the chat again. So that one is May 19th, same time. Definitely come through for that. And then also just one more event that the Cantu is putting on in our spring wellness series is that there is the last queer yoga session on May 4th. And the registration for that is
Fun.
something like, oh, I think it's this spring queer yoga. Hopefully it's that. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming out. I really appreciate this. And thank you so much, Violet, for sharing all of your brilliance.
Yeah, thanks. If you need an herbalist, go to my website and I can always make formulas with all the stuff in it. And I do acute stuff that's sliding scale, and also like the whole extremely long full intakes. And yeah, I'm glad that I'm glad you're all here.